Hi everyone, this is International Master Anna Rudolph, and today we are going to discuss a key factor that can win you many pawn and games, and it is called the outside passed pawn. Now, why are outside passed pawns so important? Why are they so powerful? This is what we are going to see with a couple of examples, starting with this one that is a position where it doesn't really matter whose turn it is. Let's say it is black to move, but it could be white to move. Doesn't matter what move you make, this position is winning for white. Let's say king d5 just to demonstrate what could happen. Either a5, f4, there are many good moves here. The point will be the following. You will start pushing your outside passed pawn, and that will make the black king to have to go towards this pawn. I like to call this the magnet effect. The outside passed pawn is a magnet. At the moment, the king on d5 is in the square of the pawn, so he doesn't need to move yet. But once you move this pawn a square further, now this is the magnet. The king has to go to c6. So it lets you advance with your king to c4. And it doesn't matter that he wishes he could stay on c6 with his king protecting the c5 pawn. You will keep on using the magnet. First, I like to push the pawns on the other flank. You want to win the pawns on the king side. So it's a good idea to advance your pawns on the king side. Those are the pawns you will promote later on. That's why f4 and h4 were played. And once you have this position, g3, all pawns are fixed, you can sacrifice the outside passed pawn. It has to be captured, and after king takes c5, your king is a lot closer to black's pawns than the black king to the white pawns, and that's because of the outside passed pawn. So it works as a magnet. It draws the opponent's king to the flank where he doesn't want to be. I mean, not the flank, but who wants to have the king on the a file when all the pawns are on the king side? So yes, it draws the king very far from the rest of the pawns. But let's see 3 games, because this was a position I made up. And now I want to show you 3 real games. This is by Bobby Fischer from the year 1971 in the Candidates Tournament against Larsen. He won it, and then against Petrosian he won, and that's how he qualified for the World Championship match 1972. I'm sure you know all that. And this game, of course, for these reasons, was very important. He played a4, and after king f8, since Bobby, of course, knew very well the importance of the outside passed pawn. This isn't the same position that we saw, but it's similar. So white has an a4 passed pawn, and black has 3 pawns versus 2 on the king side. But it behaves like the previous position. You will see it will behave the exact same way. So Bobby Fischer plays bishop c3, a winning move, because this pawn endgame is winning. The reason is the same as before, the magnet. So we are going to d4, and we want to go to the king side. That's why we played king d4, but you see that king d6 stops our king from entering black's camp. No problem. That's why we have a magnet, a5, trying to draw the black king towards the a file and letting us go to the king side. So he doesn't want to allow us. He plays f6, but a6, you see, sooner or later the black king will have to approach the outside passed pawn. And that's what happens. We sacrifice this outside passed pawn. In this moment, for instance, if black captures, that's a temporary pawn down for us. But after king e6, it's easy to see that all the black pawns will fall. The black king is just way too far. So what happened in the game was, in this moment, h4, and even if white captured, it would have been still winning, and then h5. But what Bobby did was perhaps even easier. He just simply ignored this h4 pawn. He played king e6, and his opponent resigned, because after capturing here, pushing this pawn, we will win both those black pawns. White black doesn't have time to take this pawn and then run back and prevent the promotion of the g pawn. Another example by Reshevsky, this is from the year 1969, the US Championship, which was also a zonal tournament. f5 was played by Samuel Reshevsky against Larry Evans. Both were several times US champions. So very strong American grandmasters. After king f3, king f7, rook takes e3, and here he could have played rook takes d4, which is a pawn up rook endgame, but instead he went for something that's a lot stronger, and that was to simplify to a pawn endgame which is winning. And why is this pawn endgame winning? Because it sort of behaves like an outside passed pawn. You don't see any passed pawn for black here. Only white has a passed pawn, right? But it will behave like an outside passed pawn because of g5 and f4. We will not push f4 right now, of course, that would be a blunder. But that's the plan. We will bring our king to d5, attacking the d4 pawn. And in the right moment, we will push f4 that will behave like a magnet, drawing white's king towards this pawn, and we will capture the rest of the pawns. That's the plan. What happened in the game was h4, h6. You want to keep these pawns together, of course. You need to create a passed pawn. d5 was played, but even if he wouldn't have played d5, he would have lost the game. As usual, you will have the PGN. You can download it and analyze other variations. So let's just see what happened in the game, which was king d4, king d6. We brought here the king attacking the pawn, and next move could be f4. Takes, a4, trying to prevent the advance on the queen side, and after a5, b3, g4. Actually, there was no reason to push f4, because after g4, this is a Zugzwang. The white king would love to stay on d4, but he cannot. So if he has to move, he can only protect the d5 pawn from the c4 square, and that allows f4, ouch, a breakthrough which wins. He cannot run back and prevent promotion. And if he doesn't play king c4, then what can he do? He will lose the d5 pawn. So in this case too, it was because of an outside passed pawn or a potential outside passed pawn. In this case, it would have been the g pawn, a hidden outside passed pawn, and in other positions it could have been the f4 push. For instance, if he didn't go d5. You can analyze those positions for yourself. This, what I was saying, for instance, king f3, king e6. We bring the king to d5, and then we have this f pawn, which behaves like a magnet, and outside passed pawn. Now on to our last example, which is the most complicated one, but also the most beautiful one. In this position, you see that this is not a pawn endgame. This is a position with lots of pieces. And there's a brilliant move here, which was played by Bent Larsen in 1956. So you see that I like old games. Queen takes f7 check. This is the idea. Queen takes, bishop takes, and now after rook takes, and king takes f2, we reach a winning pawn endgame. Once again, there's no passed pawn for white, but it's very likely that he will end up having an outside passed pawn. Now, why is it so likely? The reason is that he has 2 pawns versus 1 on the queen side. So he can bring his king to e4, not like a knight move. I don't know why this arrow is like that. Let's just try to draw it one by one. And we will create a c passed pawn. Once we have a c passed pawn, that will be an outside passed pawn. So I think what you need to achieve is not only that you know that the outside passed pawn is winning, but also to see the potential for reaching an outside passed pawn position. So the brilliant thing about queen takes f7 is that white knows that he's winning the pawn endgame. Here, this is a winning pawn endgame, and that takes mastery to know that this is winning. Let's see how, so that we can learn from it, and next time we will know it in our games as well. Bringing the king first, bringing it to e4. And, well, b4 was played in order to try to prevent the creation of a passed pawn, but it cannot prevent it after c3. If b takes, this is the traditional outside passed pawn. So we have a passed pawn here, black has a passed pawn here. He will lose the game because we will push this pawn to c4. We will also advance our kingside passed pawns before sacrificing the c pawn for the e pawn and for grabbing the rest of his pawns. That's winning. That's winning easily, and you can try it yourself by downloading the PGN. So what is somewhat more complicated is that after c3, b3 can be played. And now this is an outside passed pawn, but we have to be careful because there's a b pawn on the board, which means that in some cases, black could take our c pawn and go for the b2 pawn. Let's see how that works in practice. c4 is still a good move, of course, and after g6, g4, h5, takes, and h4. Now king c6, king takes, we have won the pawn. But after king c5, you need to be careful as white. So, king f5 is a good move. And now king d4. If king takes c4, you come back here. That was white's idea, and you are winning because of something that you have already learned, the airplane. This pawn will fall because next move you go king d3 and you take this pawn. So in this position, we are not heading towards the h pawn. We want the b pawn. The airplane, remember, you're a pilot. So instead of king takes c4, a trickier move for black is king d4, because he wants you to make a mistake. And if in this position white goes king e4, then after king takes c4, he could try to go for the h pawn. This might sound very complicated, but that's why you have the PGN, so you have time to replay these moves. And remember, this is the most complicated example we see because it's just way too beautiful. I couldn't resist not showing it. So yes, these are very complicated stuffs, the point is always the same about the outside passed pawn, and something that we will learn in the future is the triangulation. So what white did with his king, king f5, king f4, king e5, is called a triangulation, and the point is that in this position now it is black to move, and he has to either capture the pawn or we will protect it. So king takes c4 and now king e4. We are winning the b pawn, you know this from a previous video on airplanes and minefields. So that has been it. I know this last one might be too much, but remember the other two examples by Reshevsky and by Bobby Fischer. This position, the magnet, and also in Fischer's game, where it was actually an a pawn and a bishop endgame, and he just simply traded the bishops because he knew that this is simply winning. The black king will have to be drawn to the a5 because of the outside passed pawn, while the white king will approach the kingside pawns and win the game. I hope that you like these examples, and remember that you can practice pawn endgames by going to learn drills. There are many drills, there are many positions that you can practice, not only these kind of positions like triangulation, but also other types. So make sure that you practice pawn endgames as much as you can, and I will be back with more videos.